Good boy. Yeah.
Thanks for staying up later. That's right, kids. Your eyes do not deceive you. It's Milton Hines, better known as Soupy Sales, a man who, by his own count, has taken how many pies in the face through the years?
Over 19,000. I used to look like Cary Grant. No,
Did you ever get Cary Grant with a pie?
No, but you know what? I called him. We were doing the show out in California in 1960, and Frank Sinatra had already come on the show, and Jerry Lewis and Burt Lancaster, and one week we were sitting around, and Dean Martin was supposed to have done it, but he was on location, and they said, and we sitting around and said, who shall we get? And somebody said, why don't you call up Cary Grant? And somebody said, well, he doesn't do television. But back in 1960, in California, you could call up Universal, and they'd put you through to his office. And of course, back in those days, out in Encino, Clark Gable's name was in the phone book. It was just one of those type, kind of things.
Yeah.
So I called up Universal, and I said, can I speak with Mr. Grant? They said, okay, and they put you through. And his secretary said, Mr. Grant's office. And I said, hi, this is Soupy Sales. I was wondering if I could talk with Mr. Grant. And she said, Mr. Grant, your biggest fan. Says, we watch your show every day. Said he has a martini and watches your show. And she said, what can I do for it? I said, well, I was wondering if he would like to come on the show, and I'd like to talk to him about coming on the show and getting hit with a pie. She said, I think that would be wonderful. She said, let me put you through to him. And she put me through to him. Now, I don't do a Cary Grant impression, but he said, hey, how are you? It's nice to talk with you. I'm a big fan and everything. And what can I do for you? And I said, I was wondering if you'd like to come on the show this Friday night and get hit with a pie. And he went, really? He says, gee, he says, he says, I don't do too much television. I think up to that time, he had done a walk-on on Charlie Weaver had done a show years before for NBC with Dave Willock, and he was in the audience. And he says, gee, he says, I really don't do any television. He says, but if I do, he says, I'll be happy to come and do your show. And of course, you know how you talk to somebody, and I didn't know how to end the conversation. And I said, listen, it pays $150. And he broke up, because he was getting $2 million a movie then. But I must tell you that every time afterwards that I would see him, he always came up to me and always spoke. He just was a beautiful guy.
One of the best things about doing this show is that a sizable percentage of the guests are people that were sort of icons when I was growing up. A lot of people my age, or roughly my age, would love to be sitting here talking with you, because we came home each afternoon and we saw White Fang and Black Tooth and Philo Kvetch and all those antics on the Soupy Sales show.
It was really a lot of fun, because it was the days of live television. And up to that time, I guess kid shows, you had Howdy Doody and Pinky Lee that were physical, but they weren't that physical like my show was. And it was a kind of a show that seemed undisciplined, but which probably cost me a lot in the overall picture, because everybody says, well, he's completely undisciplined. And of course, to make a show seem undisciplined, you had to be the most disciplined performer, because I would no sooner go into a studio and not know what I was going to do as that you would be going in someplace unprepared. So we did know where we were going. Until we got there was a different thing.
Well, one of the trademark things that might have contributed to the idea that it was undisciplined, but actually it was a brilliant stunt, was January 1st, 1965.
Yeah, and that was another thing that to me is the greatest minute ad-lib in television history, to the point where all we wanted to do in those days was do the best show we could do and get paid and go home, and and really realize that we were doing pretty good. It was about 5 minutes before 7 on New Year's Day night in January on 1965, and the director came out over the PA and said, we're going to have a minute when we come out. What do you want to do? And you never want to waste a bit, because doing live shows, and we had no budget. I wrote everything. And so if you could save a bit, you'd save a bit. So when we came out, and I walked up to the camera, because nobody ever worked that close to the camera as I did. And I walked up, And I had a minute, and I said, hey, kids, I said, last night was New Year's Eve, and your mom and dad were out having a good time, and it's only right because they work hard all year long. I said, they're probably still in the bedroom sleeping. I said, no, what I want you to do is tiptoe in the bedroom and don't wake them up now. I said, you'll probably see your dad's pants on the floor and your mom's pocketbook. And I said, now don't wake them up. I said, what I want you to do is go in your dad's pants and your mom's pocketbook, and you'll see a lot of green pieces of paper, and there are pictures of guys with beards. And I said, what I want you to do is to take these green pieces of paper and put them in an envelope, and on the envelope you write Soupy Sales, Channel 5, New York, New York, and you know what I'm going to send you? A postcard from Puerto Rico. So we all laughed, and everybody went home. We came in the next week, we had $80,000. And I said, well, hell, I said, this is better than working, you know? So some woman in New Jersey wrote a letter to the FCC and sent a copy to Metro Media. Now, I know from starting in radio, and you know, if you get 2 or 3 letters, you don't pay attention to it, or 2 or 3 calls, because people will watch you and listen to you just to hate you. If you get 40 or 50 calls or letters, maybe you're doing something wrong. So I came in, and the producer said they want to see you upstairs in an executive office after the show. And I said, well, they're probably going to give me a raise, you know, because I was doing so well. I was doing Bob Euchre, you know, front row seats, you know. And I go up, and they had 11 attorneys, 10 guys and a woman. The vice president, general manager was there. And the vice president says, did you tell the kids to go in their mom's pocketbook and their father's pants and send those green pieces of paper and all the bills to you? I said, that's right. He says, how much did you get? And I said, $80,000. He went, $80,000. He said, get him out of here. He's suspended. He'd get him out of here. And they suspended me for a week. Now, the thing is, the kids are very smart. They sent in green pieces of paper, monopoly money, although I did get $1 from some 28-year-old girl said, I've seen your show and you ought to go to Puerto Rico, you know. But you want to know some of the irony of the whole thing was, and this is the honest to God's truth, in 1964 and 65, Jim Baker was doing a kid show in Flint, Michigan. He was my biggest fan. That's where he got the idea for PTL, and he went on and asked everybody. They sent him in $80 million, and I don't know where I'm working next week. But I say live and let live, you know.
So
they suspended me.
They suspended you, but your fans went nuts.
Oh,
they protested,
the fans went
right?
crazy. That was the difference. You know, they threw paint, they threw eggs, they jammed the switchboard. They called up and they said, you got to come back over here and go on TV and tell them not to do it. And I said, no, you told me not to come near the station. And my attorney said, don't go near the station. And because up to that time, nobody really knew how big the show was. Now, it was I mean, there's shows and there are shows. This happened in New York like it had happened in Detroit for me, and also in Los Angeles, where it just exploded and nobody knew about it. But I had come out with an album on ABC Paramount, Spy with a Pie, and they had a Saturday promotion for me out at Klein's in Yonkers. So
The department store.
The department store, yeah. And I go out there, and I got out, and the driver picked me up. And nobody went with me. They picked me up, and I went out there, and they drove me in through the back, and in front there were thousands of kids. And they had security, they had one guy. And they said, all right, open the doors. And they converged, and they jammed the place. I had the best stolen album in the country. They stole like 400 albums. I looked down, and I said, my God, look at that kid, what big teeth. He didn't have big teeth. They had him jammed his mouth against a piano, and that was the keys. They had a riot, and they broke the front windows. They just tore the whole place up, and the management said, everybody, you're on your own. And I was left out there with nobody, and I'm running, and the driver was down. He had the limo parked in the parking lot. He says, down here. And I looked around, and there must have been 300 kids chasing me, and I tripped. And I was there, and they were pulling and grabbing me, and some kid was hitting me with a cardboard cylinder, you know, that you wrap up maps and things.
Sure.
In, was hitting me, and I looked up, I said, why are you doing that? And he said, I just want to touch you. And he was hitting me. And that was the first, and I came back, and, you know, everybody said, how'd it go? And I said, well, you won't believe what happened. And but to that time, nobody knew what had happened, you know,
Yeah.
and what had happened to this show. And the show was just, it had just taken off. It was just big. It was just really something.
Soupy sales. Now, you never got Cary Grant to come in, even
No.
though he was a fan of yours, but Sinatra did take a pie in the kisser.
Yeah, well, that was really wild because I never ever thought about having any celebrities. I figured it was enough that I got hit with a pie. It was messy enough. I never thought, it never occurred to me to have a celebrity. It was Frank Sinatra's idea. And I was walking, I'd come from a restaurant, and I was walking down on Sunset one night, and I ran into Nancy and Tommy Sands. And they were talking about, and Tommy said, you know, said, Frank is your biggest fan. And Nancy said, yes. His dad, he said, they take a break on the movie if they're shooting a movie, and he makes everybody watch you, and he says, and he'll have a cocktail party. They have to be there half hour early, and nobody can talk. He's your biggest, and I couldn't get over. I was just thrilled about that, because I was the biggest Frank Sinatra fan in the world. In fact, and then when they offered me a Friday night summer replacement for 10 weeks, because they were bringing some show over and everything, and they had 10 weeks, and it was against Rawhide on NBC. And the first time anybody had ever beaten Rawhide, that was with Eric Fleming and Clint Eastwood. And I got a call, and they said, Frank Sinatra wants to talk with you, and because he wants to come on your show. And I said, and so I called him, and he said, I want to come on your show and be the first one. He said, but I'll do it on one condition. I said, what's that? And he said, I want to get hit in the face with a pie. And I said, you're kidding? He says, no. He says, would you like me to sing a song? He said, I'll bring my own accompanist, Bill Miller. And I said, you can do anything. So he said, listen, I'm recording tonight down at United Sound. Why don't you come down? So I went down, and Gordon Jenkins, they were leading a 40-piece orchestra, and I walked in there, and he stopped the whole orchestra and came over to me, and he went, hey, how are you? And I went, you know, I was just agog, you know, it was Frank Sinatra. And so we talked about the thing, and he says, but don't tell anybody. He says, I want it to be a big surprise. And it was his way of helping me, and he's just it was just a beautiful thing that this man did.
What's the best kind of pie to
The
throw?
best kind of pie is a heavy pie crust with shaving cream. See, because shaving cream you can wipe off in a hurry, and it doesn't stick and get, you know, gooky and everything like that. So we used, but up until 1954, we had to use egg whites and whipping cream, because the shave bomb didn't come out until 1954, 55.
Huh. So that was a big moment in your career, made your life easier.
That's right, that's right. I mean, it didn't mean much to you, but I had stock in Burma shave, and that was it. And then Frank came on later, and when I moved to New York and came on again, I saw him at Jilly's one night, and he says, well, he says, why don't you have me on your show? And I said, the first time was a favor. I said, the second time was an imposition. I wouldn't have the nerve to ask you. And he says, you get up a big pie sketch, because he loved those things. And that's why you had Sammy Davis and Trini Lopez and a whole bunch of them.
Oh, yes, closer. There you go. 5.
That's it.
You hit my son with a pie.
P-I-E.
You're the one that had your feet out there in the aisle?
Yeah.
Did I have my feet in the aisle?
Yeah. Hey, you can't do that.
What is it? 1,000 pardons, and that's two more than my uncle got. They came in seeing you guys were eating here, and I went over there, and he ordered pie.
I'd never come to this joint again. I'd like to see somebody do that to one of us.
Well, wait a minute.
You
There
know
were
what
three of
happened,
you,
don't
and
you?
there's two of him. He's the one that brought the kid.
Wait a minute. I was sitting here with my daddy, and we ordered pie, and he comes in and he goes, pie! He's like that. And I went, "Why?"
Now, wait just a moment.
And I was just minding my own business. And all I wanted to do was pie. And my daddy tried to...
Did you do that to him?
No, I mean, I was...
Now, wait a minute. I was trying to take good care of you.
Just a
You
second.
wait just a moment.
Hey, you can't do that to my leader.
What about the time that they pulled a prank on you, your staff, and you opened the door and there was a naked woman there?
Oh, yeah. Well, that happened in California. Everybody was in on that but me. And I was working up in front with White Fang. And always have to establish that, you know. And I was supposed to be talking with him. And there was going to be a woman screaming. And I would go back to the door, open the door, and there'd be a pair of women's shoes being pulled by, followed by a pair of men's shoes. And it would be a blackout. I'd look into the camera. They'd go to a commercial. So I was working up in front with White Fang, and I said, I want you to be a good dog. But I said, you will for $1? I said, well, won't you be like Blacktooth and be good for nothing? You know. And all of a sudden, they played the woman scream, and the number 2 cameras moved over, and I said, oh, he's going to get a close-up, really good. So I walked back, and we were doing live. It was live television. And as soon as I opened the door,
And you do that, I love you, give me a kiss. Be careful.
That's all right.
the show, you kept on going, and I walked out, and sure enough, there were no cameramen or engineers because they were all around the back with photo flash cameras. They were, you know, taking pictures.
Yeah.
Which was sort of tacky. I only got 2 8x10s myself, but those things happen.
And no, right now, let's have a couple of commercials.
Somewhere at home, I've got a 45 of The Mouse, which was a big hit in the mid-'60s.
Yeah, that's worth $35. That's a collector's item.
Hey, do the mouse, yeah.
Hey, do the mouse,
You
yeah?
can do it in your house, yeah.
Yeah, on the rug or on the wall. If your folks get bugged, do it in the hall. Yeah.
Be the first one on your block.
Yeah.
Every cat will be in shock.
That's right.
How do you do the mouse?
You stick your teeth out and you wiggle your fingers by your ears. Sure, you're laughing, but it kept me out of the service.
To show you the effect that you had, as if you need to be shown, on an entire generation, Al Roker, the weatherman here at NBC, pops up on the Today Show and on the Sunday Morning Show and everywhere, and here locally in New York. When I told him this morning that you were coming on the show, he started reciting Soupy sales bits, one after the other, and he's hung around and he wants to be here. And here he is,
Hey,
Al Roker, and Al,
how are you?
Al told me that his
to see you.
greatest desire in life is to take a pie in the face
pie.
Really?
A pie from you.
from Soupy
From the
sales.
master.
Hey.
The master.
White on black. Okay.
Right on, baby.
Right on. Okay, I'll show you. It's very easy, see? Because a pie, Bob, is like you throw it like a baseball or a football. You know, you don't just shove it, you just, yeah, please do.
Okay.
It's a follow through, you know.
You know, this is unbelievable because
This is a
you're a
lifelong
good
thing.
sport.
This is a
What's that
lifelong
song, though? That pop?
Papalafaka, Papalafaka, they whisper it all over Turkey. Papalafaka.
I'm glad, Al, we needed somebody to sing song.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, we'll bring in Wilson Pickett, okay?
Okay. All right, so this, there you
All
go.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, you ready?
Yeah.
Get cleaned up, Bob. You're making a fool out of yourself. Well, there you see the idea. Oh, sure. Now No, he gets mean. He gets mean.
It's the Jolly Green Giant.
And that's the way it goes. But let's look at it this way.
We'll be right back. I once hit a triple off Bob Gibson in a fantasy baseball game. Now I have taken a pie in the face from Soupy sales. I'd like to announce my retirement. There's nothing more to live for. This was the greatest.
Thank you, Bob.
See you later.
Jamie Lee Curtis and Dweezil Zappa get into the mood for rock and roll with Rod Stewart, Gloria Estefan, Technotronics, and Motley Crue.